Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Dojo Live. I am Tulio Siragusa, and today is Thursday, April 1st, 2021. And no, this is not an April Fool's Day. This is the fourth show of the week, the last show of the week, and the first show of the month. Look at that. It's like a mouthful. So, welcome. And I want to welcome my guest today. I have Adam Jackson, who is the CEO of Braintrust, as our guest. He's chiming in from a little north of San Francisco in Marin County. Welcome to the show, Adam. It's good to have you here.
Thank you, Tulio, for having me. It's a pleasure.
So we're talking today about a topic that's near and dear to a lot of us here at Dojo Live, and many companies that have adopted these principles, but could be a little controversial to some others who I like to say are still stuck in the times, right? So we're talking about talent marketplaces of the future and why user-owned and controlled companies will grow faster and be more profitable than investor-owned network. Now, that's a big claim, right? But basically saying that non-VC-owned companies are going to outcompete VC-owned companies. But before we go into that topic, let's get to know you a little bit, Adam. Could you please introduce yourself to the audience? Thank you.
Sure. Hey, Tulio, great to see you. Thanks for having me on. So my name's Adam Jackson. I'm a software engineer by training, did computer science at Vanderbilt, moved out here to the San Francisco area right out of school. That was a long time ago. It was about 16, 17 years ago. I'm sort of a software engineer turned entrepreneur. Braintrust is my fourth venture-backed endeavor. They were all marketplaces, all in different categories. So I really love the business model of sort of being punched in the face by two customers at the same time. Very hard models to start, but they're very valuable once you get them going. So the first marketplace was an e-commerce system acquired by Intuit. Second one was an automotive marketplace acquired by Advanced Auto Parts. Third one I started in 2012 with Dr. Phil from Daytime TV and his son Jay. Is called Doctor On Demand. It's now a very large video medicine clinic. So it's one of the largest hospitals actually in the country with no buildings, all video. And then Braintrust I've been working on for the last 3 years.
Excellent. Thanks for being with us. So that's an interesting journey for startups. I'm sure you have a lot of stories to share with us, but let's start with Braintrust. What gave birth to this idea? What is the purpose of Braintrust? What is your mission?
Sure. So Braintrust is what we call a user-owned and controlled network. It is a global talent network that connects right now just technical talent, so developers, designers, product managers, with Fortune 1000 companies that need them, that need so many of them that they can't possibly hire all of them in-house. So we're a talent marketplace that connect those two parties, which is not new. The new part is that we are not a middleman trying to extract as many fees as possible through transaction fees or big markups like a talent agency would. We are actually owned and controlled by our talent members. And so when you're owned by your members, you have no incentive to charge yourself large fees. And so we're able to be, through this new ownership and control model, we're able to actually change that fee model down to zero for talent. So talent make 100% of their hourly rate, and then we charge a flat 10% fee to clients, which is pretty de minimis compared to what they're used to paying. So that's kind of the new big idea behind Braintrust.
Interesting. Okay, so back to the topic today. You make an interesting statement in why user-owned and controlled companies will grow faster and be more profitable than investor-owned networks. When you're talking about network, are you talking about the traditional agencies that provide people or software engineers or resources, as some people call them, or something else? Tell us a little bit about what the thinking is behind this statement.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we say network, it's really like it's a new way of collecting people, right? An agency will kind of warehouse talent and then go out there and sell it on an hourly basis at as big a markup as they can possibly get, right? And if it's a talent marketplace like an Upwork or a Fiverr, that middleman, their job is to take as much of the transaction in the form of a fee as possible. So that could be 30 to 50% of every transaction is collected as a fee by the operator. So we invert that model. Like I said, we have the much lower fee structure. And here's why, right? So The old way of doing things, where you have a high rake marketplace, it creates misaligned incentives, right? So as these companies are very expensive to build, they require billions of dollars of venture capital, and if they're lucky enough to get big, think the gig economy companies like Uber, DoorDash, et cetera. If they're lucky enough to get big after raising all that money, the investors are going to need a return, rightfully so, right? They're the ones who took the risk. But where's that return come from? It comes from the people who make their living on the network in the form of fees. When that point happens, the incentives between the users of the network who make their living there, when that could mean delivering people, delivering food, or writing code or designing UI, it doesn't matter, and the operators who are in the owners, the investors who own all the kind of the organization, the incentives become divergent, right? And then you see this playing out today in real life with the gig economy, where half the marketplace hates the operator, right? In Uber's case, it's the drivers. In DoorDash's case, it might be the restaurants and the drivers. That's bad for business, right? If half or more of your users would do anything to get away from you, you're going to be disintermediated at some point. And that's what Braintrust is all about, right? We because we're user owned and controlled, we can lower those fees, keep incentives aligned as we grow, and everyone has a say in how the network operates, right? It's a new form of governance, if you think about it that way.
Interesting. So I'm curious. It sounds very reminiscent of the blockchain marketplaces, right? So what's the technology powering Braintrust? Are you guys tapping into that model or something completely different?
This is you hit the nail on the head. This is what they call tokenized marketplace. So instead of shares of stock, which are hard to own if you don't have a brokerage account, if you're, just somebody in another country or somebody who doesn't have a brokerage account, shares of stock are actually hard to possess. Tokens are very simple to possess. Anyone with an internet connection and a phone can possess them. So instead of a profit-seeking corporation, Braintrust is a user-owned network built on a blockchain. And so instead of shares of stock, you have tokens. Those tokens they're not profit return mechanisms. This is the foundation's actually, Braintrust is actually a nonprofit. It's like a co-op owned by its talent. And the way we prove ownership, control, voting, influence over how the network grows is through that token, which is actually built on the Ethereum blockchain.
Fascinating. We had a guest about 2 years ago, Ultra, which was disrupting the gaming industry by creating a similar marketplace where gamer developers can go direct to the end consumer and eliminate the middle people, the middle companies that are basically not sharing the wealth with those guys who are creating the games. And I was just blown away by this because it's really empowering the individual to connect directly to the end users, who otherwise would have to make significant investments to create that vehicle to sell or to gain access on their own. So do you see this also? So it looks as though you've created this for the talent space. Do you see this in other areas that could be emerging as well? What are some of the other areas you think are prime for creating this similar transparent and direct access kind of marketplace on blockchain?
Absolutely, Tulio. So with Braintrust, we're building what we call a protocol for work. So we're open sourcing the software. The token will be publicly available. And we started in this kind of narrow but very deep category of connecting technical and design talent with big companies that need them, right? It's a great place to play because it's basically an unlimited TAM. We will, in the future, using these rails and this token and this infrastructure, move into other knowledge worker economies. So think about accountants, legal, regulatory. Basically, anyone who sits in front of a computer basically can adopt this model and disintermediate, big agencies, firms, and that kind of stuff. And so we think this new user-owned model, user-controlled model, will be, the future of all information workers.
Yeah, I can totally see that. I mean, there have been predictions about what would be the next age, right? We went from the information age, what was next? And really, it's the era of the self. But you need vehicles to make that possible. So How has COVID-19 and the pandemic enabled this business to thrive or otherwise? Has it been a contributor to your growth? And do you think some of it is temporary, or do you think some of the changes that have occurred are not going to change? They're going to stay. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, let me tell you a funny/scary story that will from the last 13 months or so of Braintrust's history that will answer this question illustratively. So we spent all of 2019 building the Braintrust platform, and we decided to get into private beta our first month, January of 2020. We had 3 or 4 clients, and then we're adding 3 or 4 a month, and had a nice first month in January, and then we doubled revenue in February, and we were on track to double in March. And we're actually we're going to plan on doing some press, some public launch press on March. I think it was March 15th. That was the day California, most of the country locked down that day, and
Right.
And the markets were in free for all, and it was horrifying, right? As a startup, we're like, uh-oh. And all of our clients kind of called and said like, hey, we're pausing all the projects right now. Like, let's see what happens. And we're like, oh shoot, this could be the end of us. What a time to be in a small, unprofitable startup. And so it was scary. Everybody, we kind of cinched our belts and battened down the hatches and got ready for a storm. Who knows how long it would take. And we just raised a seed round, so we were in good shape. But and then a couple months later, so April 5th, revenue was down 50-60%. May was terrible. And then in June of 2020, our clients started calling back and saying, look, we're all still here. Like, the company's doing okay. We didn't lose our jobs. It's kind of like we're being told it's kind of business as usual. Oh, but we can't get into our offices, and we may never get back into our offices. So we're being told from management that we're now a distributed remote company. And so that's what Braintrust does, is we put remote engineering teams into big companies, right? We're the distributed engineering team people. And so it went from this kind of like, yeah, we know we'll eventually get some remote teams pre-COVID to, oh my gosh, we can only use remote teams now. So it ended up being a giant tailwind. And I'll tell you, like, when my partner Gabe and I were out selling this thing, in 2019, trying to pre-sell clients, we'd go into a big client and say, look, you've got 300 aging jobs on your board for IT people. You're never going to fill these. You got to look outside the 4 walls. And we would be met with a sort of an anachronistic thinking of like, yeah, that, we'll try that someday, but we really like butts in seats. We like to look over shoulders. We want people in the office here. And that just disappeared in March of 2020. It's gone. And I know if people will go back to the office, but I think the whole world has learned, like, you can do most of this stuff remotely, and people prefer it, right? We've polled our users, tens of thousands of people, 80+% say they'd go back 1 day a week or so if they had to. So, we were lucky, right place, right time with this thing. And I think a lot of this kind of stays where it is.
So, Adam, how are you seeing this unfold with clients? Are they choosing the agency or this, or is it a hybrid? Because I'm thinking, just playing devil's advocate here, I mean, one of the values of professional services companies is that they will vet the talent, they will interview, they will do a lot of the heavy lifting, and then figure out how to line up the talent based on the requirements. So there's some work and value that they create for the fees that they charge. I think that's fair to make that statement.
No doubt.
So is it one or the other, or is it to look at this more of a hybrid model? It says, go with the strategic partnerships you need to get the discrete, important work done, but the extra stuff, this is an approach that gives you the ability to ramp up and down as needed. Where are you seeing this sort of evolving in the marketplace right now?
Well, I'll tell you, it's evolving quickly. So let me start by saying, like, the point you're making about quality is actually the only thing that matters. It matters more than cost. Like, if you're talking about building enterprise software for Fortune 1000, the budgets are the budget. They are what they are. So we built the platform, the Braintrust platform, to be enterprise grade quality from the start. So we have these very extensive vetting processes that we put all the new talent through. It takes months to get through. We have a giant waiting list, 50,000 people on the waiting list, and we pick off that waiting list as new clients come on. But it's an arduous process to get through. So what we're guaranteeing, part of the Braintrust brand promise, is these are enterprise grade people. These are people that come out of Silicon Valley companies, that come out of places that you would have trouble poaching them out of if they hadn't voluntarily left. So we optimize for quality. And the second part of your question, it certainly started with as you say, like, give us the extras kind of work. Spin up, spin down. Certainly flexibility is a big one. But what's interesting is a client will start engaging with us by kind of throwing us some of the extras, maybe non-core work. And then before you know it, 2-3 months in, you look at a client like Nestle or Porsche. These are big clients that use Braintrust. We're building core software for them, e-commerce systems, automotive dashboard software, really core things that matter a lot to the client. Can easily be built on Braintrust. And Braintrust has small agencies on it as well. It's not just solo people. There are plenty of solo folks, and then plenty of folks who will come together around new opportunities. But we have agencies on the platform as well. The only caveat is, like, you got to compete with the global talent rates.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thinking to myself, I mean, there's two ways to look at this, right? If you're an IT services company, you can say, well, these guys are coming after my lunch. Or you could say they actually credentialize the idea of globally distributed team, because the more people get used to that model, the more they're able to adopt it across the board. Speaking of globally distributed team, how is it shaping up right now, your network of talent? Is it predominantly US based, Latin America, Asia? How is that shaping up? And the clients you serve, are they mostly in the US or also in Europe? How's that shaping up so far?
Sure. So client side, I'd say we're 90% US, 10% Europe. These are big companies, right? The big, we have big banks, big apparel companies, car companies, things like that. On the talent side, I'd say 50-60% US, and then the remainder Europe, a little bit of South America, a little bit of Southeast Asia, but all English speaking. We haven't even gotten started on the talent pools in Asia yet. That's just a whole nother world there. But the remainder would be Europe.
So do you think, for example, Europe is a big opportunity? The employment laws there are a lot stricter than the US, right? You hire someone, in places like France or Italy, or even in Germany or Spain, you can't just change someone at will. They don't have employment at will there. The laws are a lot more in favor for the employee, the people. How does that align with these kinds of offering? Do these individuals that get hired, because you're facilitating a direct hire in essence, are they still considered contractors, or they actually become an employee? How's that working out?
Yeah, this is a great point. And it's important to both sides. The clients care quite a lot about this, as do the talent. And so it's all contract stuff on Braintrust. The clients are looking for flexible spin up, spin down, as are the talent. Even more. I mean, frankly, like, the clients would probably love to have some of these folks in-house. The talent overwhelmingly they're operating their own little consulting businesses, right? And they use Braintrust as a network to grow their business. But yeah, these folks, they're one man or maybe 5-person shops. They've got their own little LLC or whatever it is. So it's all pretty much contract right now. Once in a while, someone will jump over and get hired, and that means less, revenue for the Braintrust network. And like, agencies would charge you like a 50% hiring penalty or whatever for that, and we don't do any of that stuff, right? I mean, why do we want to penalize our talent when we're owned and controlled by our talent, right? Like, we're happy for you if you want to go and get a full-time job. That's fine. And so we don't want to be friction for any of that stuff.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the company culture. You mentioned a few times we're owned by the talent. What does that mean? Do they get shares into Braintrust for being part of the network, or they have a say at the table on how the network is shaping up? Can you share with us what that means?
For sure. Yeah, this is a great question. This is the new part, right? This is the relatively new model. So there is no company, Braintrust, and therefore there are no shares. Braintrust it's what we call in economic terms a public good. And think of it like a protocol. Like, Ethereum's a protocol for smart contracts. Bitcoin is a protocol for digital gold. SMTP was the protocol that email got built on, right? And so what we do is we're protocol for work. And so there's no company, it's a nonprofit, there's no dividends, there's no profit sharing because there are no profits, right? It is meant to, it's a public good that connects talent with enterprises. And so where the token comes in, what does that mean? Being user-owned, user-controlled, is you've got control over the network. It's one token, one vote. The only way to get the token is to help us build. So write code, build a design, invite talent, vet talent, bring on clients, onboard them. All the things that like we would hire thousands of employees to do, we just have the community do. And we only have like 15 employees. So what that token does then is gives you a say over the network, just like you said. So now a skeptic may scoff, and we had, many question us on this, like, who cares about governance, right? Like nobody votes their Facebook shares. And even if they did, it wouldn't matter because only one guy's vote matters over there. Well, that is not the case here. And who cares about governance? I mean, ask the people who make their living on a network who cares about governance. There's so many examples of web-enabled marketplaces abusing one side of their marketplace. The most recent one, DoorDash, if you remember, rolled out a tipping feature where you could tip your Dasher after he leaves your food. And they decided after a full year of tipping in 2019, they're just going to keep the tips and book them as revenue. Well, if DoorDash had been built the way Braintrust is built, where it's controlled by its users, that would have been impossible. They would have had to put a vote up and say, hey, should we keep all of your tips? Vote yes or no with your tokens. And so Braintrust, our users can now control what the fee structure should be, which other categories should we be in, how hard should it be to join, all the things that like you would care about if you make your living here.
I'm listening and taking notes. Some of us are part of a movement we called radicalpurpose.org and Society 2045, where we're trying to figure out how to create this co-owned new paradigm of business where it's not one or two people who dictate the fate of hundreds or even thousands of people, but it's a shared and co-owned model. And it sounds as though you guys have cracked the code on that. How many other companies are running this way that you know of? And do you think this could be something that can be adopted easily? Or is it only applicable if you're a new company? Like most of the established companies, would they convert into this model? How hard would that be? And what are the benefits in terms of profitability with this model?
Yeah, well, lot of good points in here. It's hard for an existing for-profit company to convert to this model because you're essentially converting into a nonprofit. Now, I'll tell you now, like people are like, why are you doing this if it's nonprofit, right? This isn't a fully philanthropic endeavor here. Like there's economic reasons to do this. Our talent are very much for-profit, right? Whether you're a solo designer or you're an agency, those are very much for-profit entities using Braintrust to grow their business and access new clients that could never touch a high fee marketplace, right? So this user-owned model is about growing the pie and dividing it into finer slices across more people, right? It's just better for business. This is not a socialistic enterprise, even though it sounds that way. I'm far from being a socialist. This is actually just better for business, right? When you have a middleman extracting disproportionate value from a network than the value they provide, which is the case for most web-enabled marketplace operators, they're taking more value than they give. You're going to get disintermediated. And so I don't see a lot of, I don't think Uber is going to tokenize itself. I think you're going to see a driver network pop up that is tokenized instead of shares. And those tokens can be earned by, by keeping a 5-star rating and inviting riders and drivers and growing the network. And then all of a sudden you've got this nice, valuable driver network, owned and controlled by the drivers. Right. And then who needs Uber at that point? And that's what Braintrust is doing in just this very adjacent space.
Brilliant. Do you see the newer generation be more open to this than, most of us have come from the command and control structures that have been around, hierarchy, the fiat hierarchy that are still around, very prevalent. And there's a lot that are sort of waking up to saying, this is not okay. This is not the way of the future. This is not dignifying. There's got to be a way that's more impactful, more you feel like you belong and you can make a difference and not just be told what to do. Do you feel the newer generation are more likely to stick with something like this than something else? Do you see
Look,
a risk?
I don't think this has anything to do with age or generation. I mean, we represent a migration from hierarchies, corporate hierarchies, to networks, flat networks that mold around and get into new opportunities quickly, where hierarchies move slow. And look, I mean, folks in our generation and older, like, to know a hierarchy is to hate one. Right? Like, I don't know anyone who loves being in corporate America. It's a crock of shit. So young people, I don't think young people care. I can't speak for them, but I think young people are going to go where the opportunity is, and we're certainly bringing new opportunities to bear. But I think anyone who spent any time in corporate America knows, like, this is going to be a better model. You have better flexibility, it's better for companies, and it's better for talent. It's truly a win-win, right? It's, these big companies, there's lots of issues with having hundreds of thousands of employees, and to allow more people to unbundle and become free agents, I think is positive for everybody.
Brilliant. All right, let's talk a little bit about what it's been like. This is your fourth startup. How has this been different? What's been the journey? What's the journey been like for you? Anything you've learned differently about yourself going through this startup now?
Well, as you know, every time you do one, you screw up a bunch of things and hopefully learn from it. So my goal with the fourth one here is just to not screw up the things I screwed up in the last three, and do a better job. And so they're all hard, right? All startups are hard. And so it takes this, just the passion about getting the vision to reality. It takes the perseverance, and then, you got to have a little bit of luck. And, I was raising money for a automotive startup in the day Chrysler filed for bankruptcy in 2008. During the meltdown, we were laughed out of Sand Hill during our Series B. And we got it done. It was a little bit painful, but so that was an example of bad luck. With Doctor on Demand, telemedicine ended up being really important. That was good luck. With Braintrust, distributed teams are the new normal. That was really good luck for us. So when you do these things, like, it's always really hard, but as long as you're solving a real problem for people, painkillers, not vitamins, and you've got the guts to just keep with it and be ruthless about execution and have an amazing team. We have the best team I've ever worked with in 20 years here at Braintrust. You'll get it eventually.
Yeah, amazing. It's not hard to figure out that in order to get through some difficult times, you can tap into a team of maybe 10 really talented executives or a team of 1,000 co-leaders. Yeah. You figure out which one's going to probably work out best, right? Adam, it's been great to have you as our guest. We'll have to stay in touch and keep tabs on Braintrust, see how you guys progress along. I love to hear these new business models, and ultimately anything that's of benefit to people, that empowers people, is a good thing. So thanks for being with us today. Just stay with us as we go off the air in a second. I want to remind everyone, Monday, we're going to have the recap show. We're going to recap four shows in 10 minutes. We will announce all the shows coming up next week. We have another full week. So come back on Monday at 12 p.m., noon Pacific. Until then, have a great weekend and stay safe.